let's not bury the lead here. You see who's up next. It's the one everyone's begging to see, and that's the notorious Conor McGregor. Where does Conor fit on your list? Fightful.com. What up, Fightful fam? Shaquille Majuri here. And you know who this guy is. Former UFC fighter, coach to the stars, and the MVP of Dana White's Looking for a Fight. Dean Thomas, thanks for making the time today, dude.
No, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Well, man, I appreciate the attitude. You are currently in quarantine, off to Abu Dhabi. By the time this airs, you'll be there already shooting a whole bunch of content. So, obviously, you've spent some time working with Dustin Poirier in the past, right?
Yeah, I have. I've been a big Dustin fan for a long time. I used to train with him, and then when I went into a coaching role, I helped him a little earlier in his come up, but great fighter.
There we go. And obviously, we got this huge mega fight. It's finally here. Conor McGregor's return, Dustin Poirier's chance for revenge. And so I thought it might be kind of fun to look back at some of Dustin Poirier's biggest opponents and sort of rank them. Dean, you were asking me before we started, what's the criteria here? Body of work, skill set, how they compare to Dustin. We're gonna freestyle it a little bit, so no one get too mad. But I'll switch over here to the screen. And so we got 5 tiers here. Greatest of all time being the highest, then Hall of Fame, world champ, contender, prospect, just making it a little bit more fun with the name. So, I'm going to let you kind of take over here, Dean. I'll be here as a bit of a playmaker. But let's start with Anthony Pettis. Where do you sort of rank Anthony Pettis in comparison to Dustin Poirier as well as the rest of the guys on this list?
So when I asked you that question earlier about like body of work, career achievement, I'm going to try to make it seem as best, do the best I can with that. So in terms of that, I think what stands out about Anthony Pettis is career achievement. And I would put that in Hall of Fame based on what he's accomplished in terms of he was a UFC champ. His outside the cage accomplishments are incredible. I mean, like he owns restaurants and like he's done a great job with his career in terms of being a fighter. So I'm going to give him a Hall of Fame style career. But if you want to talk about skill set, I thought in terms of matching up against Dustin, I didn't think he was strong enough for Dustin. And that was the key here. He just wasn't strong enough for Dustin. And Dustin's cardio is just ridiculous. Like he's got some of the best cardio you'll ever see. And Anthony Pettis doesn't wrestle well enough. Like he's a great striker, great dynamic striker, but in terms of wrestling, he doesn't wrestle well enough. So when he fought Dustin, he had to fight him from off of his back, and that wasn't going to be enough in order to stifle a guy like Dustin Poirier.
Okay, I think that's a fair assessment, and Anthony Pettis now on to a new chapter of his career with PFL. Okay, let's not bury the lead here. You see who's up next. It's the one everyone's begging to see, and that's the notorious Conor McGregor. Where does Conor fit on your list?
I'm also going to go Hall of Fame there, and that is because same thing. Like Conor is a once in a generational type fighter, but he's not a GOAT. In fact, what's weird about Conor is that we still don't really know how good of a fighter he is. I mean, we know he's a devastating finisher. He can knock you out. We know he competes well, but we don't know how good of a fighter he actually is because when things get a little tough for him, he kind of gives up. So we don't really know what he's made of. Now, I think he's gotten better at it when things got a little tough for him against Khabib. And I think it was the 3rd round or so, like he was able to withstand that. He came back after a tough round against Nate Diaz in the 2nd fight and had some moments in that fight. But other than that, like he's either dominating quickly or just having, or quick tapping. So we really don't know how good he is. So because he quick taps, I can't put him in the GOAT category. I'll give him a Hall of Fame category.
Well, it's funny, too, because you would think after that Khabib loss that, maybe the hype was a little too high for Conor. But I think the way that Khabib has dominated Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, if he does indeed stay retired, I think this is the year that we're going to solve a lot of these questions because Khabib's just next level, but we kind of get to see how these other guys match up against one another.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's move on. Dan Hooker, fight of the year against Dustin Poirier in 2020. Where does he rank?
I'm going to put him as a world champ.
Okay.
I like Dan Hooker. I think he's gotten a lot better. I think he's the most improved fighter on this entire list. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch because he's so cerebral. He's really smart. He's not the most gifted and talented in terms of athletic ability, but his brain and his toughness is what sets him apart from all the other guys. And he's actually, to me, a kind of an overachiever when you look at, how athletic he might not be. Like, I can't speak on that for, absolutely. But, just looking at him, and he just doesn't look like the greatest athlete. But what he's done with his career based on what I think he's been given, his God-given talents, I think he's a great fighter. I mean, he's got knockouts over Gilbert Burns. His striking is good. His grappling is good. And he just mixes it all together very well. And I like what he's doing, so I'm going to put him as a world champ.
Okay, I think that's fair. The city kickboxing guy. Repping the squad well. All right, former UFC champion, former UFC fighter, now one championship fighter, Eddie Alvarez. Where does he sort of sit here?
This was tough because I think that Eddie's achievements surpass his skill set, because his achievements, I mean, when you talk about body of work in a career, like, I don't think there's anybody, with the exception of Conor on this list, who's had a career like Eddie. I mean, he's dominated different leagues. and here's a kid from the streets of Philly who just came up on his own and just did it all on his own. I remember seeing him back in New Jersey about 15 years ago, just like as a kid, and like just to watch him grow has been incredible. Yeah. But he's super tough, super durable. I'm gonna put him also in that world champ status because I don't know. I don't think his skill set in terms of a fighter was strong enough to get any higher above that.
Okay, I like it as I sit here trying to deal with this loose hair that won't stay up. Jim Miller. Now we're kind of getting further back into Dustin Poirier's career here, getting a little bit away from the title picture. Jim Miller, man, what a vet. Where do you put Jim?
So I love what Jim Miller's done with his career. So when I look at a lot of my fighters, I always say, you want a career like Jim Miller, because like he's been around for a long time. He's made a career, made a living off of fighting. I don't think he was ever in talks of being a world champ. He didn't have the greatest skill set. He was a grappler. He couldn't wrestle that well. His striking wasn't the greatest. But in terms of being a good fighter, he was a great fighter, and he was always going to be in your face, and he was always around. Unfortunately, because of his lack of I would say aptitude for being a champion, I'm gonna have to put him as a prospect.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially and obviously these rankings change a little bit when you put in different guys, right? So you do kind of have to do these relative to one another. I think that's a fair rating. Former UFC interim champ, World Series of Fighting champ, Justin Gaethje. Where does this man go?
I'm going to also put him in Hall of Fame. Justin Gaethje is a devastating puncher. He's obviously a great wrestler. And it wasn't until his last fight against Khabib where he got exposed. Yeah. And that's what it was. He did, like, you would have thought that Justin Gaethje could have been world champ. He was exposed against Khabib, but prior to that, I mean, he was just a devastating puncher. Now, Dustin Poirier beat him, but Dustin, I think Dustin has the ability to beat anybody on a given night. Do I think Gaethje could beat Dustin on a given night? Sure, I do. I think that was just Dustin's night. But in terms of skill set, achievement, and what they've done, you got to say he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the most not that I'm in any place to analyze these guys like you may be, but I think for me, one of the sort of real hallmarks of Justin Gaethje's quality is not only did he get to the UFC, sort of face stiff challenge and then recalibrate for UFC level opponents, but he changed his whole entire mindset about the fight game, right? When he came in, he was all about knockouts and money, but at some point he's like, you know what, I'm going to be a world champion, and the way that guy was able to completely change his approach to the game, I think is incredible. Okay, here's the one, and I think I know where you're going to put this guy. Khabib.
Prospect, no, I mean this is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you got to go with GOAT here, and you would have to go GOAT here, and almost you could even make an argument that he's the GOAT in any weight class, much less just Dustin Poirier opponents. I mean, he's just had just an incredible career. Like, his career has been good, like, and he's gotten better along the way. And it seems as though, like, the better the opponent, the better he looked in fights. It was like he looked unbeatable at times against really good guys. Like what he did to Edson Barbosa was crazy. So you got to go GOAT here, and there's no other place to even put a guy like Habib. I mean, he's just in terms of skill set and achievement inside the octagon was just crazy.
100% agree. Possibly in a class of his own. We'll see very soon. The Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jung. This was another fight that was way back when. Where does Chan Sung Jung kind of place?
I'm going to put Chan Sung Jung in the contender list here, and that's because he's been so inactive, and that kind of hurts his ranking and because of his consistency. Because he's he took that time off. And when he fought Dustin, of course he beat Dustin, but when he fought Dustin, that was a little earlier in Dustin's career. And I don't want to take anything away from the Korean Zombie. I do think he's a great fighter, but he was exposed in his last fight as well against Brian Ortega. Yep. And we see he has a tendency to make mistakes in fights at times and just almost, I don't want to say not take it seriously, but at times he makes some risky decisions in fights, especially when you look at his fight against Yair Rodriguez. He had that fight won, and just with 1 second left, did something stupid. But I'm going to put him as a contender.
Okay. I think that's fair. Yeah. Shout out to Yair Rodriguez, probably my all-time favorite knockout in the game. Okay. Max Holloway. This is an interesting one because I'm not quite sure if this video is coming out Thursday, so a couple days before Holloway versus Kattar, or it's coming out on like Monday or Tuesday, so a couple days after. So I'm not sure if the result of that would kind of change your placement, but hindsight being what it is, not knowing the outcome of Holloway versus Kattar, where are we putting Max?
Yeah, and that would be, it's fun. Man, I'm a little sad that I don't have the outcome of that, because that would definitely sway me one way or the other. But I'm going to have to put Holloway, as of right now, in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's possibly the greatest the greatest featherweight we've ever seen. Just his run at featherweight has just been miraculous. And, he's a damn good striker. He fights super smart. He makes people fight his fight. I thought he got a bad draw on that last fight where I thought he beat Alexander Volkanovski. But he should technically still be the champ now. He should have gotten his belt back, but the judges didn't see it that way. However, his fight against Kattar is going to be tough. If I knew the result of that fight, it would be a little easier for me to pick here, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in the Hall of Fame regardless.
Okay, so what you're saying is if he lost to Kattar, we might be thinking a tier down, but was there any chance
if he lost to Kattar, I would put him as a world champ.
All right, but no GOAT status on the table.
No GOAT status.
Max. Okay.
No.
And you see, I gave everyone a warning. I don't want to hear anyone in the comments saying, Dean, Max just beat Calvin. You know the timeline, folks. Pay attention. Okay, last up, Michael Johnson. What an interesting case, right? He's like one of these guys who has beat just about every great fighter, yet at this stage of his career, like always just seemed a step or two short of really maximizing on his potential. Where does Michael Johnson go?
And I like Michael Johnson as a person, but I gotta also put him as a prospect. And that's weird because like he beat Dustin. It looked like he knocked Dustin out cold. But one thing that with Dustin is earlier in Dustin's career, he had an issue with speed. He had a hard time dealing with guys that were faster than him. And Michael Johnson was faster than him. And he caught him with that right hook, that right hand, left hand combination and just knocked him out cold. And, Michael Johnson, like you said, he'll rise to the occasion and beat guys he shouldn't beat. He'll give a guy like Justin Gaethje the fight of his life, but then he'll lose to, Thiago, can't think of his last name right now.
I can't either.
Yeah. So, but this is what I'm saying. Like, so you can't really go higher than that because he's so inconsistent with his performances. So you can't go higher than that. But if you want to, but at least he's on the list. He's on the list. And he does have a victory over Dustin Poirier, but I don't think that he would ever beat Dustin Poirier today or probably ever get if they fought 100 times. I think he'd win a few, and that would just happen to be one of the times that he did win.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good thing that you note here is these are 10 guys that I selected just based on their quality. and recency. And so, Michael Johnson, Jim Miller might be on the prospect tier of this list in particular, but there's a number of guys who didn't even make the cut, from my estimation. Okay, Dean, we're all done. Let's take a quick look. I'll give you a chance to shuffle it around if there's anything you want to change. We got Habib as the sole GOAT, followed by Anthony Pettis, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, and Max Holloway at Hall of Fame, Dan Hooker, Eddie Alvarez at World Champ, Chan Sung Jung at Contender, Jim Miller, Michael Johnson prospect. How we feeling?
I like it. I got to stick with it.
All right. I like the sound of that. Dean, man, you got a whole lot of stuff coming up. It's going to be a busy week. Before we let you go here, can you tell everyone what they should look out for in your world?
Well, between this week and next week, you'll see me on Dana White Looking for a Fight. I'll also be doing another edition of the Dean Diaries. So please check that out. All that stuff will be distributed by the UFC on their YouTube page. So the UFC's YouTube page, the Dean Diaries and Looking for a Fight. Please check it out. Please support that. And then tweet about it.
Tweet about it 100%. Dean Thomas, best headshots in the MMA game. Guys, thank you so much for checking this out. Let us know what should we cover next on these tier lists. Who would you like to see join me? Got to get these experts rolling through the door. Most importantly, if you can please help us do what we do here. Subscribe, notification bell, like button. All that does so much for us. Most importantly, stay safe out there, guys. And we got a whole lot of good fights coming up. So have a great week.